Hey, today we're going to briefly discuss the maintenance on a Statim 2000 autoclave. Statim makes two more autoclaves, the 5000 and the 7000. They're both cassette autoclaves and they would both be maintained in roughly the same way. If you have any pertinent questions about a 5000 or a 7000, please call your tech support department at Dental Fix. First item of maintenance is your condenser bottle and your connections to the condenser bottle. If you'll notice on the condenser bottle, you have a maximum line on the top and a minimum line on the bottom. You must have a minimum amount of water in the collector bottle for the sterilizer to work. As you can see, there's a condenser tube attached to the inside of it. Without the condenser tube attached, the sterilizer will give you an error code every time. One of the items for maintenance you can do is simply empty the bottle into the sink and leave the water to the minimum fill line. Your second level of maintenance that you want to check will be your nylon line that connects the sterilizer to the condenser bottle. You'll want to check, we're going to turn the machine around. You're going to want to check your connections in the back. We'll go ahead and power it now. Check and make sure you have a good solid connection on the back, that the tubing is not worn or frayed, or that there's not any pinholes or creased spots in the tubing. You do not want this tubing to be pinched. Everything depends on this tubing. Reinsert your tubing as such and give it a pull to make sure you're still secure. And you are, and we have no kinks. Now we can move on to the next item, which would be the cassette. We'll move the cassette. Be careful. The cassettes are hot a lot of the times because they use these left and right with no break. These sterilizers are really put through the run. As you can see, this one is still steaming and is still wet. Do is wipe the cassette out and examine the gasket. We're going to look for tears, perforations, stretch spots, or saggy spots on the gasket. And the gasket looks pretty good on the top of the cassette. The cassette is a two-piece cassette, bottom and top. We'll lay the top aside, take the handpiece grate out, and check the bottom. We're still hot and we're still steamy, so we're going to be careful. Now we're going to examine the bottom of the cassette just like this. We'll look straight down it on the edges to make sure that we don't have things built up on the edge. Any pieces of debris or soap where somebody went crazy using the soap to lubricate the gasket. We're going to run our finger across it and make sure we have a smooth periphery with no dents or debris so we get a good seal. Okay, now we can lay the cassette aside. If we do need to change a cassette gasket, the cassette gaskets are only good for approximately 800 cycles. That's not a lot of cycles. Statim recommends 800 cycles, RPI recommends 800 cycles. This is the gasket as it will come with some lubricating soap. I'm not going to go into replacing the gasket. We've already replaced the gasket before. The gasket has step-by-step instructions on a handout that comes with every new gasket. Never, ever, ever reuse an old gasket. You're asking for trouble. Never reuse one. Now, let's move on to taking the covers off of the machine. At first, we're going to make sure the machine's unplugged and powered down, which it is. We'll remove the reservoir cover, set it aside. Now, for speed and demonstrative purposes on the video, we have already removed the screws. There'll be two screws on the opposite side. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Now, with the cassette off, I'm going to take it off at a side view so everybody can see. With the cassette out, before you do this, Raise, after you've taken your screws off, raise gently from the back until you clear the top. Until you clear these moving parts back here. Pull forward gently and slightly on the fascia and the cover. Don't pull any further than this. Set the cover to the side. This cover has ribbon cables that attach it to the circuit board. If these ribbon cables are broken or not oriented correctly or polarized correctly when they're plugged back in, the machine will do all kind of craziness. It will look like it's reading out its script in a foreign language. I'm going to turn the machine, excuse my behind here, so we can all see the ribbon cables. Paul, can you see that? Those are the two ribbon cables. It is important, as I say, do not tear those ribbon cables, do not crease them. It's very important. Now you can buy a calibration kit at Dental Fix that has longer extension cables in it. If you do have to get into servicing the machine, you use the longer cable, and it allows you to put the cover at a further, more remote location. I would strongly advise, if you've got a lot of Statims in your territory, to go ahead and purchase the calibration kit. Again, it's available at parts at www.dentalfix.com. We have the cover removed. We have to do this with the cover. We set the cover lip under one of the legs so that if we accidentally knock it during the maintenance, we can't knock the cover over and tear the touchpad ribbon off. The cover has to be engaged while we're doing maintenance and while you're doing service work on it on the inside, so we can read the data on the touchpad and on the LED. Next, we're going to check the level. We have a bead here that's level. It should be slightly off level, believe it or not. As the cassette leaks, there's a drain hole in the back of the chamber, the cassette chamber here, that actually collects the condensation, the leak, and turns it back into water and dumps it on the counter. So you want it to run slightly downhill to the left and downhill to the left rear. Slightly, 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 about half a bead. The doctor may say, that's not off level. That's not on level, that's not right. Well, it's not supposed to be on level, and you can back that up by calling Statim as well, guys. Let me turn the machine again so we can have a full view of some of the components and some of the maintenance requirements, okay? Now, this is the air pump. This actually dries the instruments in the cassette. You can tell whether the air pump is original or factory by the color of the tubing. The original factory air pump will have a gray tubing. RPI has a clear tubing that you can actually see through, which is very, very good and very important, because without the clear tubing, you can't see if any water is getting into the into this. This is a check valve assembly right here, ladies and gentlemen. The check valve comes off the boiler. This is the boiler with the tubing attached like so. The check valve keeps the steam in the boiler heading into the cassette. When that check valve fails, you will see condensate or droplets of water in this tubing, and it will eventually run the small compressor or pump here. Check valve kit from RPI, available at parts dentalfixrx.com, with the clear tubing and Loctite and the instructions for installation. There's nothing to this. These sterilizers look a whole lot more intimidating than they are, guys. Now, one item in the back that we got to change regularly, and is an excellent diagnostic indicator too. Goes on with a Phillips head screw. Your pump filter. Everybody see how I took the disc off the back of the pump? Reach in, we have a thing that looks like a donut a foam donut, or a foam O-ring. These are also available new from RPI, available through parts at dentalfixrx.com. When you take this filter out, if the filter is wet or damp, that means this check valve has been is failed and letting steam back into the pump. That will run that pump in a New York minute. We'll review the maintenance items. These are basic preventive maintenance items. And by the way, guys, before you go to do a PM on one of these, try to have these parts available. Cassette gasket, air filter, and a check valve kit. They will be an easy sell for you once you do the maintenance on them, or once you do a free maintenance if it's outlined in your territory, a free sterilizer, appraisal, or maintenance, okay? These will be easy to sell. So once every 2 years you replace the check valve. Every 3 months you replace the filter. And you also check the check valve tubing, as we stated earlier, for condensate. To replace the filter is very easy. Replace it the same way that it came out. We have a solenoid. The solenoid is very, very, very important to the machine working. Sometimes the solenoid will get debris in them and they will not close. DCI and RPI both make a solenoid replacement kit. It's very important to open the solenoid up during the cycle, not during the cycle, but post-cycle, and while the sterilizer is cooling down, and inspect for debris. To do that, this is the solenoid with the solenoid bracket. We remove the retainer nut. We remove the coil and set it aside. We take our spanner wrench, because it is a solenoid. The spanner wrench is one of the handiest things, guys. You can get it from RPI, available through parts at dentalfixrx.com. It's got both sizes, wide span and small span on it. It's also hex shaped, and it's got holes in it, so you can put a fulcrum on it or put a wrench on it if you hit an extremely tough one. This is handy to use on mid-mark sterilizers or any kind of sterilizer with a solenoid on it. Now, we've got the plunger out of the solenoid. We're inspecting the plunger for debris, pieces of debris, cuts in the seat, and resilience and springiness of the piston. And everything seems to be good. We're examining the inside as well for debris. The O-ring looks good, no debris present. We're going to check our hose while we're back here. Now, while I'm reassembling the solenoid, one word about Statim sterilizers. They must use distilled water. And it must be steam distilled water. The machine will fail immediately, and will read, it will say H2O on the LED readout. Okay, we've reassembled our solenoid. Checked our boilers for stains, watermarks. Looked at our electrical components for scorches, shorts. Everything looks fine. The machine looks clean. I see no stains on the platform, no evidence of water leaks or extreme steam leaks. With that being said, without putting the cover back on the machine, excuse me again, we'll return the machine back to the front position with our cover still secured, making sure we're not touching any metal anywhere. We'll plug the machine back in, turn the switch on in the back, reassemble the cassette. Insert the cassette in. This is a maintenance issue. Listen, we're going to listen for the click, the relays to click in on the machine. I'm going to do it very slowly. Did you hear that? I guess you can't answer me. Hear the relays clicking in? That lets you know that the micro switch is engaging the cassette. All systems are go. We're going to select a parameter, unwrapped instruments, and then we'll hit go. Now, this machine is easy to maintain because the cycles are so quick on it. Okay? We're going to stand here and run an unwrapped cycle on it, or at least see it come up to pressure and to start sterilizing. Then I'll interrupt the cycle and we'll put the covers back on it and it'll finish the maintenance. Your main issue with this sterilizer is going to be the cassette gasket, too much water in the condenser bottle, or lack of water in the condenser bottle, or a steam leak from your hose. Either one of these can throw an error code. These machines look intimidating, but they're actually very simple and easy machines. There's no cleaning to them whatsoever. Because you use distilled water and the instruments are scrubbed well, there's no need to clean this machine. RPI makes a product called Jet Dry or Stat Dry that you spray in the cassette to keep the cassette shiny. That's about the only ancillary product you can buy to maintain this machine. The Statim sterilizer only uses 1 dose of water per cycle. Unlike your big automatics that use the water, vent the water out into the reservoir and you reuse the water, this only uses 1 dose of water per cycle. So consequently, you do not get dirty cassettes, you do not get dirty boilers. Because of if you do not use steam distilled water, it will error out immediately. It will tell you exactly what's happened. If you do mess up and somebody has put tap water in it, or a less than quality water, put the cover back on the machine, carry the machine into the doctor's operatory, use his big suction or his saliva ejector, suction out the reservoir, and then replace it with distilled water. You'll get a good code on it and it will work that time. Let's see where we're at on our cycle. While you're running the cycle, take your glasses, take your watch cycle, and use your nose and use your senses and smell for steam. You can use your watch crystal, you can use glasses, you can use a small mirror, and we are holding excellently. Excellent. I see no precipitate on the bottom of the counter. Everything's holding well. We're pumping steam. We're already into the sterilization cycle and we have 3 minutes and 25 seconds to go. That is phenomenal in a sterilizer. In 3 minutes and 10 seconds now, we'll have sterile instruments. Not a problem. Now, if we want to shortcut the process, we will hit off on the keypad. You hear us vent. We're venting into the condenser bottle. By the way, Statims do not dry as quick as the bigger sterilizers. Statim allows 1 hour air dry. And it takes, the more you pack the cassette, the more it takes to dry that cassette out. Now, it's very important not to overload a cassette in the Statim sterilizer. Very important not to do this when they're putting sterilized in, when they're putting instruments to sterilize in there. This is going to be one of your common problems too. See that? That gasket can only take so much of that. Everything needs to be contained inside the cassette. Okay, it's okay to remove our cassette now, but we're not going to. We're going to check the dry on it. We'll hit the dryer mode and start. And you hear our compressor starting. our dryer compressor, which is what we changed the filter on, and we're looking for the check valve. You can actually hear air exhausting through the tubing into the collector bottle. Wet air. It's forcing wet air over the cassette. So we know the dryers are working good, the filters are all intact. Stress, 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 and re-stress to your doctors that they are to use distilled water only. Purchase distilled water unless they have a water distiller. Not out of the water cooler, not Crystal Springs, not Zephyr Hills. It's got to be distilled. So we're going to stop the cycle. Going to unplug the machine. Pop our cassette out. Set our cassette aside. Be careful with the cassettes, guys, because they can be hot. If you lay them on Doctor's Formica or a new cabinet when they're hot, sometimes they can discolor or melt the Formica or the laminate. We don't want that to happen, so always be careful and carry rags with you. Now, I'm going to turn the machine to its side to demonstrate how to put the covers back on, which was the same way that we took them off. But you can't be too careful doing this. Okay, we're going to take the cover out from under the legs of the body of the sterilizer, get some freedom of movement with it. We've already powered it down. Very important to power it down, guys. You have a circuit board over here and you have electrical components back here. If it's powered up and you short it out with that cover, more than likely it will blow the board. And that's not good when it can be prevented. So when we place the cover back on, come a little forward with the cover, making sure that we're on the outside lips. Okay? We put our fingers back here over the machinery. Push back gently until we clear the solenoid right here. It's a very tight tolerance, guys. Can you see that, Paul? Then push down gently and wiggle as you put it down. Put your screws back in. Be sure to use your reservoir cover. If they have lost this, order another one. This is very important because this has got to be kept free from debris. Turn your machine back around. Recheck your steam hose connection. That's fine. Make sure you have no kinks. Plug the machine back in. Power it up. You may want to wipe the machine down a little bit, just for the doctor. Ask the staff members if they have any questions about the operation of it. You may even, while you're doing your sterilizer maintenance, the sterilizer is usually next to the sink where they receive dirty instruments to hand scrub the sink, instruments in the sink. Ladies and gentlemen, hand scrubbing and ultrasonicking is very important with the sterilizer. You've seen the solenoid, that's the only thing that holds the steam pressure in. One piece of debris can get in that solenoid and abort that cycle. That's why it's very important that gross debris be removed from the handpieces before putting into the Statim. It will greatly increase its life. All that being said, this is a very good sterilizer. It's quick. One of the good selling things of the sterilizer is it's extremely handpiece friendly. Very, very handpiece friendly. The quicker cycle you can run, the better it is for the handpiece. This gives you a quick, permeative, effective cycle for handpieces. It is the thing for handpieces. As usual, Paul and I are available for your questions anytime on email or either by our phones. This can be a moneymaker for you and a good way to augment your income and a good way to get your leg over the wall and get to the doctor's offices. Most technicians are afraid of Statims. Do not be afraid of a Statim. Thank you very much and have a good day.